All right, guys, we'll do it live. Okay, this isn't live. I'm not good enough for live. Hey, if you do a podcast, by the way, do it live. For years, I've done content and webinars and everything. Anytime we don't do it live, we're like, we slip 15 minutes and then it's late. And then we go, hey, let's do it tomorrow. And then we do it tomorrow. We miss out. Live, when you announce it, forces you to do it right. But I've done this so many times. I'm so good at it. I can do it live, unlive, sleeping, not sleeping. Let's get into it. This is the game of money. I'm Oren. Got a lot to cover today. Hey, listen, I just want to give you a clue of, as you're listening to podcasts, I look for lots of podcasts, and it goes like this. Stink, interesting, not stink, but slow, stink, more stink. It's becoming so hard to find a podcast that's specific to what I like. I mean, you like certain kinds of music, right? Me personally, I love... So music I'm really liking. If you saw the Bob Dylan biopic, The Complete Unknown, right? I'm just not a Bob Dylan fan because of that music, but I love Bob Dylan covers, right, that are done in like a modern interpretation. So I like a very specific kind of music, and you like a very specific kind of music. If you're my 11-year-old son, what you like is he likes horrible music. But everybody likes the music they like. It's the same thing for a podcast. You like the podcast you like. Stink. It's really hard to find a podcast. Let me tell you how to find an interesting podcast. When you have someone like me, I'm not saying mine's interesting, but here we go. When you have somebody you like and they get into a technical subject that's a little bit off the reason you like them, all right? When Adam Carolla talks about cars, Adam Carolla, was on Loveline. He talks about relationships and men stuff. When he talks about cars, this is a perfect example, because he has a deep passion for cars and automotive and everything like that. When you see Anderson Cooper talking about, the African, the environment and the animals in Africa, whatever, it's not like on his news cycle. His beat is, American breaking news, crashing planes, trains derailing, police action, and hurricanes. That is Anderson Cooper's beat. So when he goes to Africa, it's because he loves it deeply. So today, on that notice, I'm going to be talking about finance, deep finance. But really, my subject is raising money and sales. So when I talk about finance and money and the Fed and inflation and quarter point movements, it's because I have a deep passion for it. Why does Anderson Cooper have a deep passion for the African veldt? Why does these different podcasters have interest in automotive or racing or sports or F1 or whatever it is? Because they have a wound in that topic. They're wounded. They didn't have something in their growing up, something as they came of age, something as they started making money and getting into business. They had a wound. So probably Adam Carolla, well, for sure, he was a contractor and he always wished he could have the car parts that he could afford or a race car that he could afford or race in a better league. So he fetishized that, dreamed about it. He never had the money to do it. And a hole appeared in his heart, developed in his heart for that. So now when he talks about it, has a passion for it, is because he has a wound that he's trying to fill, a psychological wound. How do I know that? Because that's how your mind works. That's how my mind works. I'm not sure if you guys know, my mom's a clinical psychologist. My dad was a sociologist. I grew up with this stuff. I love it. And the reason you have these passions for stuff is you're trying to cure a hole in your heart. And so when I talk about money, what I'm really doing is I'm trying to educate the young me, the 30-year-old me, on how this shit actually works. So I wouldn't be 25 years down the road just now getting it right. Okay? So I am not trying to teach you. I'm not trying to educate you. I'm not trying to share anything with you. I'm trying to fix impossibly, and that's why I show up twice a week, 3 times a week. I'm going to do this for 4 hours today. Not right here, don't worry, this is going to be over in a few minutes. The reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to fix this hole that's impossible to fix and show my 30-year-old self how to make ungodly amounts of money, because that 30-year-old guy didn't know this stuff. But now I know it, and I'm trying to show it to him. And you get to witness me trying to help myself out in an infinite doom loop. And that's how you profit. And by the way, just to go up the macro, that's the podcasts that you're looking for. for somebody who's not trying to educate you, not somebody who's trying to get clicks, not somebody who's trying to unpack the universe in order to get increased podcasts. It's somebody who's going deep into some technical rabbit hole, whether it's film, whether it's automotive, whether it's finance, whether it's artwork, whether it's literature, whether it's travel, who's going deep, whether it's photography, whether it's filmography, whether it's epoxy flooring, whatever it is. It's somebody going super deep into something, making no money, not getting paid for it. I don't get paid for this. Matter of fact, not only do I not get paid for it, I pay for it, and a lot. It's somebody who's going deep into some technical wormhole in order to try and fix something that is unfixable, and you get to watch it and benefit from it. That, to me, is a good podcast, all right? So when I say you're watching the Fed, I get it. You're a sales guy, you're an executive, you're an entrepreneur, and you're not watching the Fed. But what I mean by you're watching the Fed is you're at least paying attention to the news and not the plane crashed, not the hype cycle on CNN or Fox News, or you're trying to pay attention to the economic news, right? And that means you're watching the Fed, right? Because the Fed controls the economic news. So you want to know what's happening in inflation. You're tracking quarter point movements like it's gospel. At least you know what it means. You're like, well, I think the Fed is going to, raise interest rates by a quarter point this cycle. Oh, do you? Do you really think that? Do you know that? Like, do you know who knows that? Well, you need to meet some hedge fund managers who actually know that. They have spreadsheets like 1,000 pages deep that track the entire economy. Like, the top 2,000 companies and really what their whole supply chain is. And like people who know what a quarter point movement is likely to happen or what it does to the economy, blow your mind how much time they put into that. 60 hours a week, 10 guys running a spreadsheet that models the economy. You don't know that. You just watch CNN. But anyway, you're tracking every quarter point movement like I am, but we don't have the spreadsheet. And so, but that interest rate movement up or down or doesn't change is not going to let you know how to win in this environment, all right? What you need to watch is you need to do whatever you want. What I do is I look at the inputs. I look at the manufacturing inputs. Who owns the factory? Who controls the bottleneck of production? So with tariffs, production, because Americans, yes, they consume a lot of software, but mainly we eat food. We sleep on beds. We sit on furniture. We work on desks. We use laptops, and we use cameras and fans and servers. And that does not come from software. That comes from manufacturing. Who owns the dirt and who owns the machines that sit on the dirt? The money is in the machines. I understand. You know a couple people who made money in Bitcoin, who made money in software, who made money in finance, in moving, betting in the public markets on Tesla or interest rate movements or the yen carry trade or whatever. You know those people. Really? How many? Right? The money is in the machines. Take a look at an MRI machine, and this is a perfect example. The billing software and the booking software wrap an MRI machine. For the one person out there who's going, what's an MRI machine? Magnetic resonance imaging, right? Go ahead and get yourself in a car accident, right? And then you'll know exactly what an MRI machine is because you're going to get a $6,500 bill that says MRI on it. It's the machine that looks inside your head and sees if anything's swelling, if there's an eggplant growing in there, if somebody left a hand grenade or an old beer can in there, or you're fine. The MRI machine tells you one of those three things: beer can, hand grenade, or nothing. But that's what the MRI magnetic resonance imaging machine does. It's the machine. The billing software wraps the machine, right? That's what sends you the bill or sends your insurance carrier the bill. And the scheduling software gets you in there. That you can get that free, right? Yeah, maybe you pay for it, maybe you don't. But it's zero margin, doesn't add any margin. But you make 60% net margins running an MRI machine. So I get it. The guy who made the billing software, sold it to 20,000 customers, and that is rare. Getting a software company the kill rate on software companies that are good ideas, well-funded, is something like 1 in 5,000 kill rate. So the guy who built the billing software company, had a 1 in 5,000 chance of really getting. So you're seeing, almost like an NFL player or an NBA player sort of level of success, right? So you see an NBA player, you're not like, damn, I should just get in the NBA. That's how that guy makes money, right? That's just when you see somebody who's running a successful software company, you're sort of running the same odds, right? The money is in the machines. 60% net margin running an MRI machine. Run out and get one, make some money. I understand that's hard. So let's see. When CNBC debates a soft landing versus a hard landing, the smart money has already landed. Whatever you see being debated on the news cycle has already been decided by people who are on the inside who know what they're doing. So this episode or the next few episodes is about that. Where are things going? What are insiders buying? And how you can stop reacting to headlines and start positioning like an insider. Let's get into it. I met a guy yesterday, and his family runs a shoe factory, right? In where? China. That's where all shoe factories are. They're not Nike, Reebok, Southeast Asia, China. But so they have a small shoe factory and they run out of China. But now with the tariffs, guess what they're saying to themselves? We got to get that thing domestic, onshore, within the boundaries of the United States. So I'm talking to him, and 2 words define the entire conversation from his side. Woe is me. 3 words, pain, right? Very hard to take manufacturing from Asia or China to domestic United States, even though we're pushing it. I mean, I've done that successfully. Come visit my manufacturing, 170,000 square feet of manufacturing space in Dallas, Texas. So I know how hard it is. I know how much money it takes, and I know the pain, right? But that is how insiders are positioning now, and they're not trying to do it, they're doing it. So let's get into it. Let's call this the misdirection game. So you've heard the phrase before. The reason you've heard it before is guys say it every day. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. In 2024, that was a cute saying. In 2025, that's the whole game. If you're not at the table with money, doing domestic manufacturing in the dirt and the machines, right, then you're on the menu. Other than if you're in Silicon Valley in software, you know how to trade Bitcoin, but those are very, very specialized, unique environments that are not available. If you're listening to this, you're probably not one of the Bitcoin billionaires that I know and are mad at. But anyway, you can't be mad at Tom Brady because he's the greatest, quarterback in the history of the NFL. It's just very unique skill set. But what I want to do is make money in a way that an average person working at an average speed, working an average day can succeed at. Not be the greatest Bitcoin trader in the history of the world. Average people working an average day with average intelligence. And let's make a lot of money doing that because it's making good decisions. Making good decisions is all about being an insider, all right? If you ask any of my high school, probably none of them are alive, but if you ask any of those olden-timey guys about me, they would have said, average guy, average intelligence, gonna be, averagely successful. But I got on the inside, and the other insiders showed me how to make good choices. So I used my average intelligence, average work capability, working average days, and I got pretty good at it. So this year, there were 3,900 new private credit deals done in the United States worth over $185 billion. Inside of that deal landscape, right, there were 25 traditional IPOs priced. So 3,900 private credit deals worth $185 billion. And in the same landscape, 25 IPOs. What does that tell you? Today, the private market is thriving and the public market is highly constrained. What is the main problem with buying public stocks for you to make wealth, right? One answer. Even if you're a sales guy, a new entrepreneur, an executive, and you're not really deep in finance, the problem is perfect information. Everybody has the same information on the public companies. Therefore, they can make everybody's making decisions on the same data. Guess who also has that information? AI, software, algorithms, people with degrees in advanced physics, particle mathematics, groups of people who have AI and advanced degrees in particle mathematics, and you're trying to outsmart those people using the exact same information they have. Good luck. That's why the public markets are so difficult to deal with. The private markets is what I love, asymmetry of information. If there's one thing, if you're Joe Bag of Donuts sales guy, Write this down. Asymmetry of information. You need to be in a market where you have different information from the other decision makers and hopefully better information. That's the definition of insider. You have different and better information than the other players in that particular game. Asymmetry of information. Better information and insider know-how on decision making with that better information. That is how you get wealthy making investments. Now, there's a lot wrapped around that, but if you don't have that, then you're trading in the public markets against algorithms, against smart people, and you're literally, a monkey throwing a dart at a dartboard. So please do not complain to the helpline that I called you a monkey. I called you no smarter than a monkey with a dartboard, a chimpanzee, running around trying to make decisions. Of course, you're a little bit smarter than that. I give you credit, but not much. Like, I'm not. Nobody is. Once you have algorithms, once you have PhDs, once you have software, once you have perfect information, you're not going to win. Win in the private market. So the smart money is not buying stocks, it's buying cash flow, it's buying operating companies with stable inputs and locked in revenue at a discount with control. Again, smart money, not buying stocks. Do you need a stock portfolio on the S&P 500? Sure. But where's the money made? Buying into cash flow through operating companies with stable inputs, not being crushed by tariffs. What does that mean, not being crushed by tariffs? It means domestic manufacturing, domestic raw materials, domestic machines, and that means locked in revenue because we have a $13 trillion consumer, the American buying public, and you're trying to find that stuff at a discount and you're controlling it. That is called private equity. Cash flow, operating company, machines, not software, stable inputs, locked in revenue, recurring revenue, getting that at a discount and with control. Why? Because the game is not about growth. Way long ago in the year of our Lord 2021, 4 years ago, you could buy into growth, right? And that was the smarter monkey theory. It wasn't, I just came up with that. It was the, catch a falling knife. So what happened is in pure growth, if you bought into something, as long as it was growing, you were pretty sure there was a buyer at a higher price on the other side. So you could buy in high and sell higher. In 2020, 2019, 2021, some of 2022, you could buy high, sell higher. Crappy strategy because at some point that stops working, all right? You can't just buy into growth because there's not going to be somebody around to, even if it's growing, to necessarily buy at a higher price than high. What you need is control over the private assets, be able to grow them methodically, and then sell that on value to a public market buyer. Why does a public market buyer want a private deal? Because it is beyond probably the scope of the time I have left here today. But suspend disbelief. If you take some machines, you take a building, you take raw material, and you make something, and then you grow revenues, and those revenues grow methodically, not wildly out of control, and you're producing income, right? And you get that to a scale that's 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, whatever. There's buyers in the public market that are hungry for that because something is crossing the threshold to the public market on which does not yet have perfect information. Not everybody's following it. Not all the machines are aware of it, and they can buy into the strategy. They can buy into a private strategy using small amounts of money on the public market. That's why the IPOs are so valuable, right? But you need to be in the IPO long before it goes to IPO in order to really leverage yourself. All right, so let's see. I'll give you a window into where I think smart money is flowing into, and then we can wrap it up, and I'll finish this up next time. All right, so capital is flowing into hard asset plays today, not because they're trendy, but because they're tangible, and the growth capital, whether it's debt, whether it's equity, whether it's equipment financing, inventory financing, whether it's just management taking stock for a salary, all those are forms of financing. Those are flowing into hard asset plays, right? Because they're tangible. So institutional capital or management who's willing to take equity instead of $1 million salaries is looking for vertically integrated manufacturing platforms. That means you make something, but you have control of the raw material, you have control of the supply chain, you make the thing, and then you have control of the sales channel. Domestic material supply, so you're not dependent on China, Malaysia, India, Vietnam, Korea, Turkey, Spain, or places further away than that for raw materials. You're able to have leverage on your inputs, the factors of production, right? And you have asset-backed income streams. That means your income is based on equipment and something that has a very high barrier to entry, right? Your income is not based on software, which has very low barriers to entry, right? Now, does Microsoft have barriers to entry? Yes. Stop using Microsoft as an example. Microsoft, Facebook, DoorDash, let's name them, Amazon, just Zoom, like those have very high barriers to entry because they're very sophisticated software platforms, but your basic emerging software company has very limited barriers to entry. When you have manufacturing, domestic, vertically integrated supply chain, very hard for somebody to copy what you have. And then if you wrap it in a good brand, Black Rifle Coffee or whatever it is that Americans recognize as a good Restoration Hardware, you wrap it in a brand, boom. Now you have an incredible, high value American company that you can make real wealth on. That's not a pitch, that's a playbook. Hard asset base, contracts for inputs, technology differentiation, demand and a category that's already proven, wrapped in a brand in which you're inserting technology. Not a pitch, that's the playbook. So that's the question if you're an investor, if you're an operator, if you're a salesperson, right? You don't want to keep betting on stories or narratives, right? You want to own the infrastructure that the narratives are based on. And that's a conclusion today of what I would like to tell my 30-year-old self so I could have a lot more private islands, airplanes, cars, and all kinds of cool stuff, spaceships, all kinds of cool stuff today, right? Do I want to just keep using a narrative based on somebody else's infrastructure, software, technology, supply, and know-how? Or do I first want to own the infrastructure and then wrap it in a narrative so it has multiple moats around it, which I believe is where the real value is. All right, so this has been The Game of Money with Oren Klaff, trying to talk to the historical 30-year-old version of Oren Klaff. You got to witness that conversation and hopefully get some value out of it. But if you didn't, give you your money back. Money back guarantee on this podcast. All right, that's it. I'll see you next time. We'll conclude. Oh, so here, what we're going to get into on the next one is the questions, if you're an executive, if you're a salesperson, if you're an investor, what you should be asking about the economy and about a business in order to make money going through the rest of this cycle. We'll define what this cycle is, what a cycle means, what's in this cycle, where I think this cycle is going, and what questions you should be asking yourself in your little journal, which I assume you're keeping, about where things are going, because there's no way that you can make money unless you're a talented basketball player or Tom Brady protege, unless you know where things are going next in the economy. So I'll give you that on the next podcast. This has been The Game of Money. We're sponsored by the book Pitch Anything, and we wrap it up on that. We'll see you next time. Game of Money. I'm Oren Klaff.